This video is about finding mean, median, mode, and range. Before we talk about the measures of central tendency, you should have watched the video called The Measures of Central Tendency and listen to the song, because in the song it talks about these three measures. Okay, and you're going to need your booklet so you can follow along with his tutorial. Be sure to take notes and fill in the missing vocabulary words or missing data. So let's talk about this, the measure of center. The measure of center is a single number used to describe a set of numeric data. And a measure of center describes a typical value from the data set. So from the song, you remember the measures of central tendency. One of them is called the mean. Recall that the song said the mean is the mean one. It makes you do all the work. And then number two, the second way to measure center is using the median. And median means middle. So what is the middle? And the third one is called the mode. And these are the three measures of central tendency. Be sure you record this in your notes. So let's talk about finding the mean. The mean is the value that represents an even distribution of data, or it's the average. Okay? In the mean, we want to spread out all the data so that everyone has the same amount. That's this. Okay? And when we use the mean to describe data, it means that we don't want to include data that have outliers. So the mean is good for using to find the center when there are no outliers. But what is an outlier? Well, an outlier is just basically a number in the data set that is much smaller or much larger than the other numbers. So here in this data set, we have 1, 3, 5, and then a 25, and a 7, and a 10. So notice the 25 is much larger than all the other data. So now let's try finding the mean. Remember from the song, it said the mean is the mean when it makes you do all the work, add up every penny and divide by the many. So in this case we have every penny is 15 plus 18 plus 22 plus 20. And then when we add it up, it gives us a total of 75. And then it says divide by the many. Well, in our data set, this is our whole data set, we have 4 pieces of data. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to divide by 4. That gives us an average of 18.75. And that makes sense because we're looking for the center of 15, 18, 20, and 22. Could the mean be less than 15? Or could it be greater than 22? It shouldn't, because we're looking for a middle number that is in the middle of this data set. So now let's try a data set that is 3, 4, 5, and 6. Pause the video and solve it in your booklet, and then come back to the video and see if you did it correctly. Okay, so let's take a look. 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 is a total of 7 plus 11. And 7 plus 11 is 18. And how many pieces of data do we have? We have 4. So 18 divided by 4 gives us 4.5. And so the middle data of that is 4.5. That would be our mean. So mean of this data set is equal to 4.5. And I hope my answer matches yours. The next measure of center is the mode. The mode is the value that occurs the most, and it sounds like most. It sounds like mode. Mode sounds like most. So use the mode to describe data when choosing the most popular response. So the one that gets the most is the most popular response. Again, the mode is the most frequent in the data set. So in our data set of 80, 85, 90, and 100, which number occurs the most? Well, the mode would be 90 since it appears more often than the others. So now let's find the mode in a word problem and in a bar graph. Dave counted the number of times people sharpened their pencils in class for a week. He counted 4, 13, 4, 2, 14, and 11. What is the mode of the number of people who sharpened their pencils? Well, in the data set, it would be the ones that occur the most. That would be 4 and 4. So the mode here would be 4. In a bar graph, however, we're talking about which ones got the most. In this case, is which type of pizza is the most popular. What's the mode? So it turns out that 90 is the highest, and the mode would be this kind of pizza and this kind of pizza. So finding the mode in a data set is a little bit different than finding the mode in a bar graph. In a data set, we look at the number that occurs the most, and here it was 4 and 4. But in a bar graph, we look for the bar that is the highest. Now it's time to work on finding the median. When ordered from least to greatest, that's very important. In finding the median, you have to list your data set in order from least to greatest. It is the middle number. Use the median to describe data when the data has an outlier. Remember that that's a number that is very different from all the others. So in a data set, it's 1, 2, 25, and then 3. The outlier would be 25. So we want to use the median if your data has an outlier. When the data is not spread evenly, that's when the median is the most helpful. So find the median. So first let's start with putting these numbers in order from least to greatest. So it looks like 32 is the smallest number here, 32, followed by 34. So I'm just going to write 34. So any more 30s? No, there are not. The next one is in our 40s. So we have a 45 and another 45. Any more 40s? And that would be no. 50, 60, 64, and then we have a 68. No 70s, but we have an 80. That's 82. And then we have a 95 and a 99. Okay. So one way to find the median from our song, if you recall, it said median is the one in the middle, slash off all the sides, and it's the one in the middle, something like that. So anyway, we would start with crossing off low, and then high, and then low, and then high, low and high, and low and high, and we would end up with a one middle number. So here our median is equal to 64. And that's because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces of data. When you have an odd piece of data, you will have one number that represents the median. If, however, you have 8 pieces of data, an even set of data, so let's pretend that we didn't have this 99. If we didn't have the 99, let's see how I can get rid of this 99. Okay, so let's go back to, let's pretend that 99 is not part of our median, our data set. That means we would have 32, 34, and then we would look at 45 and 45, and again we would have 64, 68, 82, and 95. Well, if you look at this data set, we have 8 numbers, and if you try to cross off a low and a high, low and a high, low and a high, you'll find that you have 2 middle numbers. In this case, you have to add the 2 middle numbers, 45 and 64, and then divide the whole thing by 2 because we want to find the middle of that number. And if we did that, this would be 45 plus 64. That gives us 109. and 109 divided by 2 would be something like half of 10 is 5, half of 9 is 4, something like 54.5. And that would make sense because somewhere between 45 and 64 would be 54.5. So now let's try finding the median number of ice cream cones sold. And so looking at this bar graph, we would first want to write down what each number represents here. So we can look at this first one. On Friday, it looks like there were 80 sold. And then on Saturday, if we follow this should be 60 sold. And on Sunday, it looks like there were 70 sold. And then on Monday, there were 60. And on Tuesday, there were 80. And on Wednesday, there were 80. And on Thursday, there were 60. Now, if that's my data set, I have to list the numbers again in order from least to greatest. So 60, 60, 60, 60, 60. So I have 3 60s. I have 170. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 3 80s. And if I go to slash off the sides, it's low and high, low and high, low and high, and we finally have a 70. Okay, and if you didn't want to do the slashing method, then we can count each of our data pieces. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if we want to say, well, what's half of 7? Well, half of 7 is going to be about 3.5. That tells us that our middle number is going to have 3 numbers to the left of it and 3 numbers to the right. And if we check, that's true. If 70 is we're counting 1, 2, 3. Here's 3 numbers before we get to the median and 3 numbers to the right of the median. So there are 2 ways to figure out the median. And now, last but not least, is the range. Although the range is not a measure of center, it does describe the spread of the data, like how far apart is our data. So when we look at finding the range of the data, we take the high minus the low. And if you look at our data set, the highest number is 94 and the lowest number is 73. 94 minus 73 gives you 21. So that's a pretty big range. Now let's look at our graph here. It says find the range of the number of cookies baked. So on one day, 10 cookies were baked and another 80. So the lowest number was 10 and the highest number is 80. So our range is going to be, you guessed it, 80 minus 10 is going to be 70. And that's how you find the range. Lucas Science test scores for the fall semester were 70, 72, 99, 72, and 69. Luca's parents asked what his math test average was. Which measure of center should Luca use when he's telling his parents his average? Well, if you're Luca, you're going to want to present your parents with the best story, right? So we can either use the mode to tell what's his best score, or we can use the mean. We can use the mean to tell if it's a better score, or we can use, finally, we can use the median. So I'm going to ask you to figure it out. Which one is the best one? So why don't you pause the video and then figure it out and then come back and check to see what you decided. Okay, if you wanted to go with mode, the mode would be a 72. And if you were calculating the mean, you would have gotten 76.4. And if you're calculating the median, it looks like you'd have to put these in order. 70, well, I guess you saw 69, 70, and then 72, and 72, and finally 99, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I slash off the sides, my median would be 72. So which measure of center is the best in explaining his average? I guess it would be the mean in this case. And I hope your answer matches mine.